Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Good morning. How are you? I hope you are all fine there. We are from Group 9. I am Anjania Muhammad F and other two members. They are Rizqi Hayyu P and Sahrul R. Today, we will discuss about first and second language acquisition. And let's go to the discussion. The first is acquisition. Language acquisition is the process by which humans are acquiring the capacity to perceive and comprehend language. In other words, gain the ability to be aware of language and to understand it, as well as to produce and use words and sentences to communicate. We continue to the acquisition schedule. As we can see, there are three columns here. The first is stage, the second is ages, and the third is explanations. In this section, we will discuss about language stage, and there are 4 language stage here. The first is pre-language stage. Pre-language stage divided into 3 age categories. First is 3 months to 10 months ages. The explanation is going the first recognizable sounds. These are vowel sounds like K and J, and usually high vowels like I and U. And then the second is by 6 months ages. The explanation is babbling. The child is able to produce a number of different vowels and consonants such as fricatives and nasals. Sounds like mu and da. Oh, I wanted to say sorry before. I had a mistake that pre-language stage divided into 4 age categories and not 3. Okay. We continue our discussion. The third is around 9 months ages. The explanation is that babbling, intonation patterns. And the last is 11 months ages. The explanation is that babbling, the infant child made use of vocalization to express emotion and emphasis. Light babbling is characterized by imitations too. Okay, after the first stage, we continue to the second stage. The second stage is the one word or holoplastic stage. In this stage, just have one ages categories, not ages, just one age categories. That is 12 and 18 months ages. The explanation that a single form or unit function as a phrase. A single form or unit function as a phrase or sentence production of a single unit utterances. The third stage is the two-word stage. Same like the second stage. The third stage is just have one age categories. That is 18 to 20 months stage. Oh, sorry. I mean 18 to 20 months ages. Sorry before we have some mistake when we create these columns. Okay, and the explanation is that the child's vocabulary is now the child's vocabulary now is beyond 50 words. The combination of words that the child forms the combination of words that the child forms will be interpreted in different ways depending on the context of the situation. Okay. The last stage is telegraphic speech. Telegraphic speech divided into three ages categories. The first is 2 and 3 years old. This stage is characterized by strings of lexical morphemes in phrases such as cat drink milk. Second is by the age of 2.5. Like, the explanation that a child's vocabulary is expanding rapidly. Oh, I forget how to speak that. Sorry. And the last is 3 years old. The child's vocabulary resembles to at the vocabulary of an adult.
Okay, I will continue explaining about the linguistic process. When the child is actively constructing forms in the process of acquisition of language, the child is being taught and tested. That way, the child will have a better notion of language and develop it correctly. The use of sounds and word combination are important either in the practice and interaction with the language. Certainly, children can be heard to repeat versions of what adults say on occasion, and they are clearly in the process of adopting a lot of vocabulary from the speech they hear. For example, the child, "My teacher holded the baby rabbits and we petted them." And the mother said, "Did you see your teacher held the baby rabbits?" "Yes." "What did you say did?" "She held the baby rabbits and we petted them." "Did you say she held them tightly?" "No, she held them loosely." The next is developing syntax, semantic, and morphology. Developing syntax. Similar evidence against imitation as the basis of the child's speech production has been found in studies of the synthetic structures used by young children. One child, specifically asked to repeat what she heard, would listen to an adult say forms such as "The owl who eats candy runs fast," and then repeat them in the form "Owl eat candy and he ran fast." It is clear that the child understands what the adult is saying. She just her own way of expressing it. Developing semantic. The anecdotes that parents reveal about their children's early speech to the intense embarrassment of the grown-up child usually involve examples of the strange use of words. Having been warned that flies bring germs into the house, one child was asked what germs were, and the answer was something the flies play with. It is not always possible to determine so precisely the meanings the children attach to the words they use. The next is developing morphology. By the time a child is 2.5 years old, he or she is going beyond telegraphic speech forms and incorporating some of the inflectional morphemes. They indicate the grammatical function of the nouns and verbs used. The first is to appear is usually the ing form in expressions such as cat sitting and mommy reading book. The next morphological development is typically the marking of regular plurals with the, the S form. As in boys and cats, the acquisition of the plural marker is often accompanied by a process of overgeneralization. And then the next is second language learning. What is second language learning? Second language learning is a conscious process where the learning of another language other than the first language takes place, often called with bilingualism and multilingualism. The process has to take place after the first language has already been acquired.
The first way that we should consider to take is focus on the method. Focus on the method consists three types that are the grammar translation method, and then the audiolingual method, and the last is communicative approach. When we take the grammar translation method, there are some points that we have to pay attention with. The first is vocabulary lists. The second is sets of grammar rules. And the third is memorization. And the last thing is try to practice with a written language rather than spoken language. But if you are a person who find it easy to learn by listening, then we suggest the audiolingual method. The audiolingual method is the best choice for you. You can learn by listening to various conversations. You can start from a simple conversation, then to a more complex, and don't forget to do repetition. Doing repetition is sometimes very boring, but it is useful for you. However, there are also people who like to learn in a more practical way. If you are a person who hates learning patterns and cannot stand with the grammar rules, maybe you are one of those guys. Don't worry. In dealing with this kind of situation, we might consider with the communicative method. Just one thing we have to do in this method: try as much as possible to talk to native speakers. In the traditional way of learning, error is usually avoided and considered as a negative thing for the proliferation of students. After all, there is a fundamental change in the second language learning, and that change have been made the second language learning more progressive and student-centered than the traditional way. The communicative method has shown the communicative method has sound has the communicative method has shown these signs. In general, the situation is referred to as focus on the learner rather than focus on the method. As we can see in this slide, focus on the method, as we can see in this slide, focus on the learner consists of several important points that we should pay attention to, that are transfer, that are transfer, interlanguage, motivation, and the last thing is input and output. Transfer means using sounds, expressions, or structures from the first language when performing in the second language. For example, a Spanish speaker who produces Take it from the side inferior, maybe trying to use the Spanish adjective inferior and placing it after the noun, as is typical in Spanish constructions. If the first language and second language have similar features, example marking plural on the end of the nouns, then the learner may be able to benefit from the positive transfer of first language knowledge to the second language knowledge. On the other hand, transferring an first language, on the other hand, transferring a first language feature that is really different from the second language. Example, example, putting the adjective after the noun results in negative transfer, and it may make the second expression and it may make the second language expression difficult to understand. We should remember the negative transfer, sometimes called interference, sometimes called interference, is more common in the early stage of second language learning and often decreases as the learner and often dis- and often decreases as the learner develops familiarity with the second language. The second point is interlanguage. Since we have put the example on the slide, this form of proof shows that there is some transitional framework used in the acquisition process of second language, which includes second language aspects and first language aspects, but which has its own rules necessarily variable. This method is called interlanguage, which is now considered to the base of all second language output. The next point is motivation. In a good second language student profile, there are many variables combined. Of course, it is important to inspire to learn. A lot of students have a drive. They want to master the second language for a second reason, like finishing a school degree or being able to read science articles, but not for any specific social purposes, such as students with an inclination motive want to master the second language for social reasons, to partake in and become an acceptable member of community social life. The last point is input and output. As in the first language acquisition, the word entry is used to identify the vocabulary to which the student is introduced. This feedback needs to be comprehensible, so we cannot process what we do not understand to be useful for second language learning. Output can be understood by being clearer in form and vocabulary, such as the so-called foreigner, such as the so-called foreigner talk, such as the so-called foreigner talk. Native speakers of English may try to ask an international student, "How are you getting on in your studies?" If, however, you don't understand that you like it, can turn to English, this form of international talk can be useful to provide the initiator with simpler and more intuitive explanation of second languages basic structure as feedback, not just for in not just for immediate communication success. The next important point as a second language learner is communicative competences. The overall ability to use a language correct, relevant, and functional can be described as communicative competences. The first aspect is the knowledge of grammar, which ensures that words and structures are used correctly. The student would be the student would not be capable of reading or generating second language expression correctly if it relies on grammatical competence alone. The second aspect, called sociolinguistic knowledge, is the ability to use effective language. It encourages the learner to know when, to the social background, he should say, "Can I have a water?" versus "Give me some water." Many of pragmatic problems addressed in the cultural sense of second language have been established if the learner is to develop socio-linguistic skills. Strategic competence is the third part. This is the ability to actively coordinate a message and resolve difficulties through strategies. When second language is used, students encounter eventually periods where the potential of the students to communicate their intention remains. Some learners can stop talking a bad idea, while others try to communicate with one another a good idea. For instance, the speaker of Todd's first language tried to speak in English with the word Inhofinger, but didn't know the English word. She then used a technique for correspondence by using the language she learned. She created a way of referring to the object, saying the stuffed horses, saying the saying saying the stuffed horse is placed under the feet, saying saying the stuffed horse is placed under their feet, the iron things, and the audience instinctively grasped what they mean as horse's shoes. The this versatility is an ancestor This versatility is an essential component of contact. This versatility is an this versatility is essential component of contact performance in the second language application. This versatility is essential component of contact performance in the second language application. Essentially, strategic competence is the capacity to solve possible interaction coordination challenges. In this final slide, I will put some bonus information that is applied linguistic. In seeking to explore the dynamic essence of second language learning, we could use theories in other areas, such as communication studies, education, psychology, and sociology, not only from language study. This significant undertaking is sometimes referred to as the applied linguistics. Since it is an effort to deal with a broad variety of functional language problems, not just second language studies, applied linguistics have formed partnerships with topics as varied as anthropology, neurolinguistics, cognitive science, and study about the sign languages.
Okay, that was the presentation of material from our group regarding first and second language acquisition. If you wanted to ask, please write down your question in the comments column on Google Classroom. Okay, maybe that's all from us. More or less, we are sorry. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.